I'm getting so many instant messages. Very good. Welcome, everyone. This is the Viikki Sustainability Research Seminar that we used to have in Viikki a couple of years ago. And since the pandemic, when we went to work on distance, we have had this as a webinar. And we quite enjoy having the seminar as a webinar. And you are most welcome. So what we do is we have different sustainability topics, and this spring we have decided to have the theme related to sustainability is time. And today we talk about imagining future or imaginaries that they are very relevant for time, but later we will also talk about longer time horizons, and then we will talk about how to speed up how to manipulate time and how to speed up sustainability transition or transformation. And this seminar, this Viikki Sustainability Research Seminar, is hosted together by Natural Resources Finland, so LUKE, Finnish Environment Institute, SYKE, my institute, and the Helsinki Institute of Sustainability Science, HELSUS. And my name is Eeva Primmer. I'm research director at SYKE, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to listen to these interesting talks. So today's theme is, like I said, sustainability imaginaries and good life in sustainable future. So we're trying to imagine the future. And we have three interesting speakers who come from the host institute. So from Titta Tapiola from LUKE, Tero Heinonen from SYKE, and Antti Laherto from HELSUS. And if everything's okay, we can already we can have Titta Tapiola come next. And Titta is a biochemist by background and has also studied future studies, very relevant for today's topic. And she's a principal specialist in marketing at Natural Resources Institute, LUKE. And she's presenting a paper that's co-authored with Vilja, Varho and Katriina Soini, also from LUKE. And her topic is on packaging, how we can imagine packaging for the future. And with that, I would give the floor to Titta.
Thank you very much. Let's start sharing. Yeah, I could also mention that actually I have the study right to future studies as well. So for doctoral studies. So
exactly. Good.
Let's hope that one day before I get retired, I get.
Excellent. We can see your slide. Yeah.
Okay. So it started from the middle. So let's start. So my topic today is from a single vision to a vision cluster, visions of sustainable food packaging. And as Eeva already mentioned, I have co-authors here, Vilja Varho and Katriina Soini. So visions, what are they? Visions are normative, sort of small scenarios that focus on creating desirable futures. Scenarios can be anything between desirable future and dystopias, but visions are concentrating on desirable, wanted futures. And visions can be short or presented as a longer narratives. And in this case, we have created rather short visions. There are plenty of, or we found plenty of food system visions from different contexts and different levels, from local to regional to even global scenarios, but only few was found for food packaging. And that's why we, of course, started to create visions. And it is seen often that visions are important for guiding systemic transformations as a starting point and guiding the direction of transformations. And as a context, the packaging system can be seen to consist of three subsystems. And that's why it's rather complex, because there are so many different kind of actors. So there is many ways to divide or describe packaging system, but we use this kind of definition that there is food, package production, and recycling systems. So materials what we used in our study are here. So the main material came from the visioning workshop we conducted together with Click Innovation and for recycling project there, 2020. And the time frame for the visions was 2050. That was the goal. And then we had also other materials from kickoff seminar, workshop for NGOs, and some interview materials as well. And we call these visions what were created in a workshop as actual visions. But from these others, we call them vision elements because they were not created as a purpose to make a vision, but they were visionary elements more than actual and fully productive visions. So vision framework, or analysis framework, what we developed from the materials consists of these two axes, X and Y. And X is breadth of change, meaning that how many actors we have there. An amount of actors, more it goes to the right, more actors the vision needs to come true. And depth of change is actually connected to Meadows' leverage points and absence description of restructure and rethink and reconnect. And so this reconnect and restructure. Restructure is actually reorganization of structures and institutes, and rethink is renewal of thinking and learning. And finally, the reconnect is creation of new connections, for instance, with nature and different levels. It can be different levels, personal, organizational, or community level. So this is the framework what we used. So here are the examples of visions, and we place them in this framework what I presented just a few some time ago. So we actually also created this kind of fourfold, and we named them according to the water bodies. And if we start from the lower left side, which is called pond, and there is, I could mention one example is that packages are easy to sort. That's an example of narrow and shallow vision. If we go to the broad, a little bit more broader, but still shallow vision, which is in an area of beach, we call it beach. There is an example I could mention. Consumers have been motivated to recycle, for example, with deposits. This kind of a vision. If we go to higher to fjord, which is still narrow, but now it's deep also. There is an example of the vision in 2050 there will be 10 sustainably produced recyclable materials in the world, and we use that are used for food packaging. And finally, the ocean is a broad and deep vision area, and there is an example, for instance, parallel solutions, recycling, parallel solution, recycling, biodegradable, reusable, or non-packaging solutions exist at the same time. So that needs more cooperation. So probably individual visions speak for only a limited number of participants, but together, when we think about it as a cluster, we can bring together very different visions and views of desirable future. and that enables discussion together about their significance and probably also possible tensions between the visions. So on the other hand, visions at different places in this field bring up different levels of change and can act at different phases of these future paths. So for instance, these bond visions, which are narrow and shallow, can work as a point of change, as a low-hanging fruits, not so deep and not so transformative maybe as such, but on the other hand, they can motivate people to act. But and at the same time, we have to take care that we are not preventing those bigger transformations to happen if we just concentrate on these little bit more narrow and shallow visions. And this is another example of this vision cluster. Now we collected visions into the cluster, which are talking about reuse and recycling. An example from there I could mention quickly is from the ocean, meaning broad and deep vision, is that by 2050, Finland is known as an expert of recycling, producer of clean food, and top exporter of diverse, logistically smart, and recyclable food packages. Rather inspiring vision there. So, what next? So in general, it was envisioned more cooperation within and especially between different food packaging systems and different levels also. And transformation was seen as an opportunity to innovate and bring new functionalities to packaging and to entire packaging system. On the other hand, complexity of packaging system is a challenge, but also seen opportunity, and especially visions crossing these different subsystems are very interesting and maybe a good starting point. And Package Heroes will continue the work with stakeholders and intends to promote the realization of these visions, what have been also presented here. So I think that was it. So thank you very much.
That was very concise. Thank you, Titta. And how now anyone who's here can ask questions. We have some time for questions. You can also write a question in the chat if you want, but you can put your hand up or glove, like people say, in the Teams. But before, while you're thinking about the questions, maybe I ask my first question, seeing there's no hands up. It's interesting. These are quite sort of big entities that you addressed with or big sort of conceptual complex things that you addressed with visioning. Was there much difference between the different stakeholders who participated in your work or participants? Or would you want to comment on what kind of participants you even had, what kind of companies, and whether they were like sort of encountering legal restrictions or whether they were very close to the consumers, or what type of actors you had?
Many different kind of actors. So in the workshop, we had actually quite nice selection of actors, mainly companies, but there were also from ministries for research institutes, other than these what we are representing in this project, and actually and NGOs as well. So and we had this workshop for NGOs especially also. So actually quite nice selection of different kind of actors.
Very good. Very good. And did the stakeholders in some way, could you, with your analysis, identify whether they differed in the way they were visioning?
Well, actually there was this kind of maybe not maybe limitation, but we had to, because we had to divide people in different groups because there were so many participants in the workshop, and we divided them a little bit according to solution. And that's something maybe which was limiting the thinking maybe, because two groups were, one was for fiber solutions and one recycling, and then there was this something totally else. So it might be that affected a little bit the thinking.
Yeah.
And
That's
the background,
really
of course, background of the participant always a little bit, you can see that it a little bit has an impact on the future view.
Excellent.
Which is natural.
Very good. Now Susanna has a question.
Yes, thank you. Because I have also worked with people's visions or mental images. I'm always very curious about the actual ways of asking or making people work towards those visions, because the methods themselves might have a huge impact on how they imagine the possible future. So can you give some examples about, what you kind of, how can I say, included in the, what perspectives you included or excluded by the methods themselves, or give examples of the methods?
So this vision workshop was in the middle of this corona crisis. So we had to have it. We were planning, of course, to have it live event, but we had to have it online, which of course is very challenging. And we were really thinking how to do it. We had this quite nice platform, HowSpace, we used, and we tried to open up people's thinking first. We had these different drivers, and we then asked them to think about how these drivers could affect packaging, and then sort of tried to have a good atmosphere. But of course, it's really challenging in online environment, and so yes, so we had this first open up thinking, and then going back to the packaging thinking, and then ask people to have in this context to see this future, how it could be in the 2050.
Very good. Yeah, would be nice to participate.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat that it would be nice to hear about the non-packaging solutions, and would you want to describe the non-packaging solutions? What kind of ideas came in that?
Non-packaging solutions, there were not so many. It may be just this direct sort of picking up or things like that, but there was no visions or such visions that I could remember now directly, which would have been except this direct. Just
yeah, so that people collect.
Yes,
rather than,
collect.
Yeah. So, because then there was another part to this question: what scale this could.
Actually, now we had another survey which is not connected to this material. We are actually asking people how they see, for instance, this kind of home production or this kind of other distribution methods than this traditional kivijalkakauppa, traditional trading. And people were not, the people who have answered this survey didn't see this kind of home production or 3D production or this kind of new technologies not so relevant yet, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe more these other distribution methods more than these different kind of technologies producing food, for instance, at home.
Yeah, interesting. Other thought that comes to my mind, but we will go forward. But is this that when you said that this was during the COVID time, that there was a moment about food packaging that the people thought that it's very important that the food is packaged so that it would be more sterile somehow. So that was also like a bit of a temporal thing. I think it passed away, but yeah, very good. Excellent. Thank you, Titta. We go forward. And our next presenter is Tero Heinonen from SYKE, my colleague. And it's a nice continuum because his work is about advertising and the different claims that are made in advertising, and then in these claims, how future is imagined in those. And Tero, I should say a few words about Tero. Tero's background is in environmental and natural resources and in economics. And so he's in a good position to tell us about advertising imaginaries. Please, Tero.
Thank you. This presentation is based on Ympäristöväittämät project, which is just about to end, but not just yet. So you might see some draft text out there in the graphs I will show you. But let's get started by clicking in the right space. Right, so let's get started to make some background assumptions. You could also always question that advertising hasn't any impact on your consumption, but today we are going to assume that it has at least some impact. That's why money is spent to it. And another background assumption is that even in the visions of the future, consumers would still need to buy at least something, even if they are achieving just sufficient levels of consumption. So consumers would be still buying something, and there would be advertisement, and advertisement would have some impact on consumers. And also on the process, on the transformation to sufficient consumption. Already we are assuming these things today. So it's rather a path than just two separate points in time. So we're just asking a question: how is advertising helping us to find sustainable products and to buy them? So first, definition of environmental advertising. You could use the word environmental or green or sustainable. And the first definition takes the starting point that the sustainability is mentioned in the advertisement, and this one is used in our research. American Marketing Association uses a different definition, and some scholars use it as well, and there it's presumed that the product is somehow environmentally better, and we look into advertising of these products. So that's probably interesting then to take this advertisement and then compare it to probably the most harmful products and how they are advertised. So we are focusing today on the green area on the graph. So environmental marketing or sustainable marketing would be something much broader concept, and environmental claims are the main part of environmental advertising, but claims may exist outside advertisement as well. But we are looking at the ads. And the method is content analysis. So basically, put it in a nutshell, we take a sample of advertisement and then classify them according to different viewpoints, just to get a descriptive picture of their qualities. We are not doing any main or quite sophisticated statistical analysis. We just take some classifications and try to understand the phenomenon as such. And this is something hasn't done before in Finland, so you're probably about the first ones to hear this. So what was included in our project? We took this sample. I'm going to talk about a little bit next. We also had a 1-week citizen science campaign just to challenge our sample. Did the citizens point out to different kind of ads or marketing? And then thirdly, we had a workshop for business organization and also to influencer marketing organization. But that was just part of the project. So today mostly about the sample and a little bit about the results of the citizen science campaign. Well, we collected 269 web advertisements. These were unique ones, so some of them appeared in the magazines several times, or some of them had almost, or let's say, put it this way, some of them in the social media had different versions of them. So basically the same text, but just a little bit different picture. That's probably the most common way to have a kind of a different ad, but we regard it as just as a different version of that ad. So we focused on web advertising, and it may be surprising, but it's already 50% of all the money spent on advertising today in Finland. So this is not a comprehensive sample of all advertisement in Finland, but it's not trivial either. We have mostly covered the web advertising. What is missing is search engine advertising, and this is quite some money going to that part as well. So we are not reaching kind of the 50% of the advertising money, but we are observing around 30% of it. And we took October 2021 and looked at 4 popular newspaper or magazines, and these are especially popular in the web. And we found 42 unique ads in the magazine. And then another way to collect the ads were Facebook ads using Big Spy search tool. And then we find 227 unique ads and many more different versions of these ads, but it made sense to analyze only the unique or different ones. And then just one word more, the Big Spy provides us popularity figures of the ads. So we dropped out the ones who were not successful at all, and it appeared that they were the most of the ads weren't that successful. So we had the pool of ads of nearly 4,000 ads that we went through and addressed and looked if sustainability exists in these ads. So quite some of them not really comprehensive and big sample, but big enough to get a grasp of the phenomenon. And then the citizen science campaign that lasted only for 1 week, and we get nearly 80 observations from the citizens. And you might think, is that plenty or not? But the authority which is overseeing environmental advertisement and advertisement in general in Finland, they receive hints from the citizens, and during 1 year they don't get half of that number of hints. So this campaign has to be successful in numbers, getting many ads, and probably it was kind of just easy for the people to put them in social media, put the hashtag there, or just then use the anonymous form on SYKE's web page. Okay, let's get to the results. First, we holistically defined the main theme in the advertisements. And you see here that the sample is orange and the citizens is green, and they differ a little bit on their main themes. The most common themes were ecological, sustainable, vastuullinen in Finnish, or then combined theme of if the ad was saying carbon neutral or compensation or net zero or on some other climate impact so that it would be neutral or even negative. You might find the column carbon emissions somewhere in the center, and this is all claims or ads that were claiming something about climate or carbon emission reduction, but they were not claiming neutrality. Well, the fourth column needs a little bit explanation. It's nature as backdrop, and this is mostly visual ads that don't actually say straight anything about the environmental or sustainability impacts of the product, but it hints quite strongly that the product is connected to the nature or the user gets some benefits from the nature using the products. The fifth column is labels. It's quite common, and you see many kind of general words here. I just took one more, and it's social sustainability somewhere in the center. One of the I think it's five observations just. So we started doing the projects looking at environmental advertisement, but it was quite obvious from the start that vastuullisuus or sustainability is quite common there. So then we decided that okay, we take to the sample all sustainability claims. So even those ones who are just claiming social sustainability. So it's not very common to claim or advertise so that the firm takes care about social issues. Environment is much more common. This has now, of course, changed quite a bit after the Russian invasion, and we see all sorts of social sustainability claims, people leaving Russia and all sorts of these. Then to the sample, and this is just from the sample as all the remaining graphs. Mainly products were advertised, also entire corporations. Also a little bit, you can see this nature as backdrop. It's not very big part of the ads, so you could conclude that this sample is mainly about the claims, but it's not just about the claims. Then target groups, it depends quite a lot or differs whether it was Facebook or the newspapers we looked at. So in Facebook, it's mainly to consumers, but on the newspapers, quite many of the ads were targeted to businesses. Then is sustainability the spearhead in the ads? When we went through the ads, we identified, is environmental message the only message in the ad, or is it clearly the primary message in the ad? If the ad, for example, if the ad said this is environmentally beneficial and very, very qualified and low-priced product, then this focus or emphasis was weak. So it was in the Facebook ads, it was much more common that the products had, or the ads had something else also to say about the products than the environmental or sustainability credentials. But it differs in the newspapers. It was more common that the main thing in the ad was sustainability or environment. Then a little bit worrying news, how deep or substantiated the message was in the ad, and it was found out it was very rare that there were real environmental labels or kind of quantified, substantiated information. These two would be examples of the deep category. Then the consumer or the buyer would get more knowledgeable information. These green parts are moderate. Then there are mentioned one environmental impact. And then the shallow ones, which is the red one, then it just mentions sustainability in general or other very general thing. It's not moving to the next one. Now it's moving. Okay. And then this is the last graph. So we assessed also acceptability of the claims. And this is also a bit worrying news that it was more common to have ambiguous or omissions. And by omissions, we mean that the ads are mentioning something, some impact, but some very relevant impact is missing, or they are pointing out to some really small thing that has been done, but they are not telling the whole picture. So we took these two classes, ambiguous and omissions, and if the ads didn't fall out to these two, or if they weren't classified as outright lies, then the ads were classified as acceptable. So this is to be regarded just as a necessary condition to be an acceptable ad. It may fall for other pitfalls as well, but these were not regarded in this research, but more than half still unacceptable. How much time do I still have, or should we move forward to the questions? Sorry, your mic isn't on. Eeva.
Yeah, sorry. Good if you wrap up, Tero.
Okay.
So that maybe we have a bit time for a question. That's
good. That's good. We wrap up basically the two last things. Quite many of the ads were found unacceptable, and clear and unsubstantiated information is very rarely provided. It's not just consumers, but also businesses targeted. And then one word more, it wasn't an easy task to collect a representative sample of ads. And even with this sample, we have just part of or main part of the web part of advertising. And even with comparing the newspapers and social media ads, we get quite a different picture. So it would be very interesting to look at all the advertising going on at the market. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get to the questions. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent. We have time, and Camilla Karhuma actually has a question. So please, Camilla.
Thank you. Thanks, Tero. That was a really interesting presentation. I missed 2 minutes in the middle, so excuse me if my question targets specifically that. But I thought it was really interesting. I'm working on carbon offsetting, so it was quite interesting that was the claims related to carbon neutrality and offsetting and compensation was the third most popular category there. And what I noticed there was that specific category had a large proportion of citizen science claims. So was that, do you have any kind of understanding of why citizens were submitting specifically claims related to compensation and carbon offsetting? And, is it because it's a polemic topic or so forth? And then kind of maybe in the broader context, in this context of environmental advertising, in Finland, the person who is or the administration that's responsible for these is the kuluttaja-asia henkilö, I think perhaps is the correct wording for this. So do you have any sort of idea, are there any ongoing cases regarding environmental advertising with that? So have any citizens raised concerns about environmental advertising to that institution?
Okay, the first question, I took the graph here. It is true that it's because of citizens, this carbon neutrality is so high here. It's difficult to say why people point out that this, and this graph should be, and we will done in the research so that it's more comparable, because here is all of the sample and then we have the citizens. It would be better if we had from the sample those ads that we classify as unacceptable, and then took the citizens' hints as well, because nearly all of the citizens' hints were there because citizens took them as unacceptable. So then the picture might change a little bit, but maybe it also tells us that citizens are looking at the big firms more, and in the sample from Facebook we have also small companies. So that might be one reason, but that's really a good question why it differs that much. Then to the second question, I have a history from that authority called Consumer Ombudsman or Consumer and Competition Authority, and they receive these hints, but the hints aren't the only way for a case to get into scrutiny and other means, and they quite much operate quite silently. So they are not so much public about this issue. So for example, if they get into something, they first start to talk with the company, and all of this is unpublic. And then the company might just correct its ways and behavior at the market. And I think most of the cases are this way. And so the cases kind of end and you could say that the situation at the market is corrected. But of course, the harm which was done, you cannot take it away. And that's of course a problem. And then we citizens, we don't get to know of this. And so we might think that all this advertising going on is fair and acceptable, but probably it's not. So a little bit clarification there. Yeah,
that's really interesting, and I think it might be worth actually describing, because it's quite special when we think of then the public scrutiny of other mechanisms for public scrutiny. We have a bit of time pressure, so we're planning to finish at 4. Just for those who are interested in talking to the speakers, we have an opportunity to talk after 4, so you can stay on and talk to at least some of the speakers, have time to stay, but so that we manage to listen to the third speaker. So thank you, Tero. And our third speaker is Antti Laherto, and he's from HELSUS, then the third organization participating today. And his background is in physics education and science education, and he also has docentship in science education. And he will be telling about this or describing how imagining future happens with pupils in the education. And with that, please, Antti.
Thanks a lot. Can you see my slide all right?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks a lot for the invitation. It is really nice to be talking here to you about educational research that addresses sustainability issues. So I am from the Faculty of Faculty of Educational Sciences. I used to be at the Faculty of Science, but nowadays in the Faculty of Educational Sciences. And our faculty has been participating in HELSUS for a couple of years now, and sorry, I'll take the time. And there are a number of us researchers in the Faculty of Education who are focusing on the challenges that the global sustainability crisis poses to education. So our approach is that education is one of the key drivers of sustainability transformations that are very much needed. Also, as you've probably know, the United Nations and the UNESCO have highlighted the role of education in the pursuit for the SDGs. And there's quite a bit of discussion also that education for sustainable development actually requires quite a fundamental rethinking of all values and purposes and methods of all education. So there's a lot going on at our faculty also because of the sustainability crisis. My own specific field of expertise is science education. That is science teaching and learning in the primary and secondary level of education. But these ideas that I present here are pretty relevant regarding all education, I would say. So let's start from the question that why do we actually teach science in school? For several decades already, there has been this shift of aims in science education and all education from the so-called Vision 1 to Vision 2. This shift is very clear in curriculum and pedagogies and also educational research. Vision 1, or traditional school science, is about disciplinary authenticity. So it kind of looks inward to science itself. It's about traditional content knowledge, and we can say that its primary purpose is probably to prepare students for further studies. On the other hand, this Vision 2 is about personal relevance. So it doesn't look inward to science contents, but it focuses on the situations that students will face now and will face in the future in their everyday lives as citizens and consumers and so on. So this kind of approach to education has been kind of taking over during the past few decades. For example, nowadays the Finnish national core curriculum for the primary and secondary level education emphasizes this kind of aims, Vision 2 type aims, quite strongly, although there are elements of a Vision 1 also there as well. Now, during the past decade or so, and because of this growing realization of the global sustainability crisis, there have been many suggestions that maybe this Vision 2 is no longer enough as an aim of science education. So also science education should find more critical approaches. You know, this Vision 2 is mostly reactive, but we need proactive education. And we need value discussions, and we need education that supports activism, for example, and education that supports transformative learning, which is a very popular term nowadays, but in the context of sustainability education, transformative learning means this kind of education that aims for a value-based change, both in the learner, but also in the society. So this kind of Vision 3 is now emerging, focusing agency, or emphasizing agency and sustainability, and this kind of transformative learning and value-based change in an individual and in the society. So according to this Vision 3, fostering students' transformative agency has become an important aim for science education. Now, this agency has been defined in social sciences quite in many ways, but quite typically as the capacity for autonomous social action during which people intentionally transform their social and material worlds. Now, it is clear that this kind of agency is very much connected to how one thinks about the future. So our dreams and hopes and thoughts on the future have an impact on how we act at the present. A very deep impact. One example of this is the climate anxiety that has been researched and talked about a lot. And here we can, for example, see how an individual's agency is very fundamentally connected to feelings and thoughts about the future. For example, the effect of climate, the effect of that anxiety may have deep impacts on how one acts at the present day. So this is why we are doing research on students' futures thinking in an EU-funded project called Fedora. You can check out the website there if you want. And in Fedora, one of the goals, our goals, is to try to reach an understanding of the relationship between young people's future perceptions and agentic orientations and the roles of science and technology in them. And we have, for example, noticed in through our empirical research that among European young people, it is quite typical that young people think about their personal futures and the collective or global societal futures a bit separately. So it is quite typical to think that personal futures may be, one's personal future may be quite positive and in one's own hands, but the societal and global futures are seen very gloomy and completely out of one's influence. This kind of two-track thinking is very typical and also very natural when analyzing how young people see the future. And also we have noticed that science and technology is very much connected to our collective futures in young people's imagination. So the future images of the society, for example, they are very technological. But science and technology is not that much connected to their personal futures, for example, through career choices or anything like that. So somehow the development of science and technology is seen a bit separately from one's own agency or disconnected from one's agency. This diagram is from my PhD student's Tapiola's paper that will be very soon published in European Journal of Futures Research. It's quite small, but here it shows how in young people's essays on the future, what kind of technologies are there and how do those technologies affect the society or the surroundings. And here, for example, it is quite interesting that only green lines, which means the positive effects, go to environment. So European young people seem to consider the effect of technology only positive on environment in the future. And we would like to challenge that thinking because yeah, it is really worth problematizing. And we argue on the basis of our results. I will have some links to our papers if you want to read more. We argue that science education should foster value-based futures thinking and seeing alternatives, because we have seen that young people's futures thinking seems to be very conservative and focused on incremental changes, and it is very difficult to imagine alternative value-based preferable futures. And that's why we have for quite some time we have collaborated with the field of future studies, and we also had this project called IC that originated when I was doing a postdoc in the University of Bologna. And in that IC project we have developed courses on climate change, on artificial intelligence, and quantum computing and carbon sequestration. So they are future-oriented science education courses for upper secondary schools in Finland and Italy and Iceland. And in those courses we have the students have practiced 3 different kinds of futures thinking, which you can read more from our papers, because I think I need to wrap up now. Here's some results. So it very much seems that this kind of future learning activities that employ futures thinking methods and problematize deterministic views of socio-technological change, they seem to engage and empower students. The students have felt very much empowered after the courses, and they have learned how to think about and accept uncertainty in a new way, so that uncertainty is no longer connected to anxiety, for example, or fears about the future, but uncertainty is connected to opportunities to influence. You know, you can only influence an uncertain future, right? I'm very open for any questions or feedback or ideas for collaboration. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Antti. Very nice, and it sounds also very therapeutic. Your your approach that we in SYKE as an environmental organization we encounter a lot among our stakeholders, and of course we hear it that it is particularly strong among the young people, environmental anxiety. And so we are also working on this, how to address that with, as professionals or future professionals. So that's very interesting. There's a question to you, Antti, that what kind of technologies in the graph that had the different lines, what kind of technologies were mentioned, or can you then assume what kind of technologies were the ones that were supposed to have the positive impact? Or was it just technology in general?
Yeah, so the assignment there was that they like students of age between 16 and 19, they in 3 countries, they wrote essays on the future. They wrote about the typical summer day in 2040. So we analyzed just what all kinds of technologies were present there in their writings, and then did a qualitative content analysis on the essays, and this is where these categories here emerged.
Very nice. Well, it sounds like they then have a strong technology belief, or like that they see that as a solution. This is all super interesting. You are doing a good advertising job to about your papers. Just because we're at 15:55 according to my clock, I will just say that thanks everyone for joining. You can stay and we can have a chat, but we will stop recording at 4. And the next Viikki Sustainability Research Seminar is on the 27th, and it will address longer time horizons than what we have today. But now if you have more questions to Antti, we can stop recording and you can put your cameras on. Now we are in the after